Good morning. Pleased to be joined by colleagues here today. Vice Chair Ted Lieu, DPCC Chair Joe Neguse, and the Appropriations Vice Ranking Member Grace Meng. We're 7 months into House Republican majority, and week after week, Speaker McCarthy and the extreme MAGA Republicans have offered the American people nothing but chaos, conflict, and confusion. This is partly because they have surrendered to the most extreme members of their conference. House Republicans have put seniors on notice that they're coming hard for your benefits that you have earned. House Republicans have put veterans on notice that they're coming for your health care. And House Republicans have put women on notice all over this country that they will not stop until they get a national abortion ban. The message from House Democrats could not be more different. Our economic agenda is working, and the middle class is growing. Here to talk about that today is DPCC Chair Joe Neguse, and we're also going to hear from Vice Ranking Member Grace Meng on the appropriations bills that could potentially come on the floor today, this week. But first, we'll hear from Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. Democrats put people over politics and passed a number of laws last term to grow the economy. As a result, Morgan Stanley a few days ago recently credited Democrats and Joe Biden for having them now revise their GDP projections upwards 4 times. In addition, 800,000 manufacturing jobs have been created, and consumer confidence is now at its highest point in over 2 years. What are Republicans focused on? Banning abortions. And this week, they're going to put on the bill a number of radical appropriations bills that are going to cause a government shutdown because it breaks the deal that Speaker McCarthy and Joe Biden negotiated. And if we continue to see this level of extremeness from the Republican caucus, then I think the American people are going to hold them accountable next year. Now I have the great pleasure of introducing my colleague, the fabulous member of Congress from Colorado, who is a chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, Joe Neguse.
Well, thank you first and foremost to Vice Chair Lieu and to Chairman Aguilar for their leadership. I don't know that I could say any better than Chairman Aguilar did. 200 days. It's a long time. That's how long House Republicans have been in control here in the United States Congress. 200 days. And during those 200 days, what have they done for the American people to improve the lives of the people that we collectively represent? Absolutely nothing. No bills on lowering in healthcare costs, on addressing inflation, on growing the middle class, on raising wages, on school safety. None. Instead, we're left with hearings on gas stoves, 3 hearings on gas stoves, a bill this week on the long-eared bat. The House Republicans' priorities are completely distorted from the needs of the American people. And of course, it's no surprise because, as Chairman Aguilar said, the extreme wing of the House Republican caucus has taken control here in Washington, D.C. It is a shame. They said that they would strengthen America's economy, and instead, they threatened the full faith and credit of the United States of America during the manufactured default crisis. They said they would protect communities, and instead, they're now undermining our national security with dangerous bills that challenge and attack the freedoms of so many Americans. The American people expect us to do the people's business, and that's precisely what House Democrats did when we had the majority in the last Congress with the leadership of President Biden. It's the work that we continue to do today, to put people over politics, to lower costs, to grow the middle class, to build safer communities. And that's precisely what we will spend the month of August during this critical work period, communicating with our constituents, the work that we did on the PACT Act, and the importance of ensuring that veterans in our communities sign up for those life-saving benefits, the work that we've done to grow the middle class, to eliminate junk fees, and so much more. We will remain focused on the people's business because we put people over politics. We implore our Republican colleagues to start doing the same. With that, it gives me great privilege and honor to introduce our colleague from the great state of New York, the vice-ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, who has served with distinction in the Congress and our caucus, Grace Meng.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar, Vice Chair Lieu, and our DPCC Chair Joe Neguse for your tremendous leadership. Congresswoman Grace Meng, and I'm the vice-ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee, and I have had a front row seat to the extremism that is driving dysfunction in our Appropriations Committee process. The proposed spending bills House Republicans published cut the agreed upon funding levels that were codified in the Fiscal Responsibility Act and were agreed upon between the Speaker and President Biden. Promises made, promises fail. These shameful bills would kick more than 224,000 teachers from classrooms, reduce Head Start services for more than 50,000 American children, and deny job training and employment services for hundreds of thousands of American workers. Despite claims that Republicans support our veterans, their bill worsens the quality of life for service members and their families and hurts military readiness by cutting $1.5 billion in military construction. This bill is so draconian, it cuts fresh fruit and vegetable vouchers in the Women, Infants, Children WIC program, in addition to cutting WIC by $800 million. Extreme MAGA Republicans are taking food out of the mouths of the 5 million women and children who are enrolled in WIC. House Democrats, on the other hand, are fighting to ensure American families have the resources they need to just survive, not just survive, but to thrive. House Democrats are not going to go back on our word, and we are not willing to risk the future of America by playing political games. 200 days later, House Republicans are cementing their legacy of hurting our farmers and vets, stealing food from kids, eliminating access to clean water, and destroying broadband will be the legacy of House Republicans. I yield back to Chairman Aguilar.
Thank you so much to my colleagues. Happy to take some questions.
Chairman, Republicans, first of all, they went after Mayorkas, then they went after a couple of other, and now they're going after President Biden and Hunter Biden. Your reaction to that?
This is just a complete distraction, and Speaker McCarthy knows it. But in the absence, as Joe Neguse mentioned, in the absence of talking about important policies that reduce costs for everyday Americans, this is what we're left with. There's no there, but that's not going to stop House Republicans from advocating things that they feel are harmful politically for the president. But I have two members of the Judiciary Committee behind me, so I'll yield first to Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. In Judiciary, we're going to hear from Secretary Mayorkas. If you look at the actual data, it turns out that last month, there was a decline of border crossings to the lowest levels in over 2 years. And if you look at their raw data, there were approximately 99,545 border apprehensions last month. That is less than during the height of the Trump administration. So if the Republicans want to go and try to impeach Mayorkas, good luck with that one.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have too much to add. I would just simply say the American people understand that this is a political sideshow. These are political games. I mean, look, House Republicans 3 months ago, 4 months ago, were talking about impeaching the Homeland Secretary. Then they talked about impeaching the Attorney General. Now, apparently, talk of an impeachment inquiry with respect to the president. Apparently, the extreme MAGA Republican wing of the House Republican Caucus would like to impeach every single federal official if they could. And I think the American people would far prefer that the Congress focus on real priorities and real issues that are impacting their daily lives. And certainly we will continue to do that. It would be the prudent course for the House Republicans to do the same.
Yep. One last thing on that. There is no impeachment, Mayorkas, Biden, and there was no impeachment unless the so-called House moderate Republicans also support impeachment. So where are they? They give happy talk, they give moderate talk in their local press when they're back home at the Rotary, but when they come here, they vote lock, stock, and barrel. So let's see what they do, and let's see if truly they're willing to stand up to their leadership. Mike?
The IRA turns one while you all are back home next month. I'm curious if you have any reflections on the legislation. Are there any specific provisions that you all will be messaging back home to really kind of reinforce the progress that you all have made with the Inflation Reduction Act?
Thanks for the question. I think, and I'll yield to Chair Neguse to talk a little bit about the messaging that we plan to convey during this August recess. But the breadth of the bills and the legislation that we have been able to accomplish here in Congress under the leadership of President Biden has been huge. And the Inflation Reduction Act is one very large piece of that. For me personally, when we go back home, talking about the investments in climate, the dollars that are going out into our communities to help mitigate the climate crisis, investing in wildfire prevention techniques and services, those are things that are meaningful back home in the West. Every member is going to talk about different aspects of this differently, but the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, CHIPS and Science Act, these are monumental pieces of legislation. And it's important for us when we get back home to talk about them. But the 1-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act is so impactful, reducing the cost of insulin for seniors to $35. These are things that families care about, and it's our job to convey them. And Leader Jeffries says this in this context. It's not to praise us. It's not to say thank you for delivering that. It's to say trust us, because when we get the majority again, those are the types of benefits that we're going to help deliver for the American public. Chair Neguse.
Chairman Aguilar is precisely right. And with respect to the Inflation Reduction Act in particular, members of Congress, I think you're going to see members of our caucus across the country, coast to coast, in the heartland on August 16th, the 1-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act's enactment, visiting with their constituents, talking about the various ways in which that particular piece of legislation has had an outsized impact on our economic growth, on creating a clean energy boom with respect to jobs, the various investments that Chairman Aguilar noted that are very important for those of us in the West with respect to communities like mine and his that are facing the growing threat of looming wildfires, visiting with seniors about the $35 insulin cap, incredibly important provision, literally life-saving for so many seniors across the country, would not exist but for President Biden's leadership and the leadership of congressional Democrats last year. So you will certainly see us out and about with our communities, in our communities, talking about the work that we have done and the work that we intend to continue doing with their help.
Republicans have taken a lot of credit on the Infrastructure Act back home. Do you anticipate seeing that from your Republican colleagues on the Inflation Reduction Act anniversary? And if so, how do you message against that so constituents know who is behind this legislation being into law in the first place?
Well, the beauty about all these pieces of legislation is that there have been ways and projects, and continuing so in the next few months and years, that we will see how they will benefit the American people in both Republican and Democratic districts. For us, this is not about politics. I'm grateful for the leadership of Hakeem Jeffries, who created the Regional Leadership Council. Chairman Steny Hoyer is the chair, and collaborating with the White House, they came up with a website, invest.gov. If you go onto this website, you can see both public and private partnerships. There are docs literally all over the country in both Republican and Democratic districts about how bills like the IRA and the other ones that Chairman Aguilar mentioned are benefiting the American people. And a lot of these grants and programs have not even been fully written and implemented yet. So the best is yet to come. I will say that it is so ironic that they are home in their districts. either Republican members who voted against these bills or Republicans as candidates who railed against these bills and then standing in their district touting the benefits of all these bills. And at the same time, it's ironic because in our House Appropriations Committee, they're literally putting in amendments, trying to chip away at bills like the IRA and the infrastructure bill and the other ones.
Nick?
So it's Wednesday, 2 days to the end of the session. It's the last day that you guys can force floor consideration of the privileged censure resolutions for George Santos and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Do you support them coming to the floor this week?
I haven't talked to the author of the Marjorie Taylor Greene resolution, to Representative Becca Ballant, about her intentions. What I will say is that there is a process. House Democrats have stood and said George Santos does not belong in Congress. The Ethics Committee had 60 days. 60 days has come and gone. We await the product of their work. But we strongly feel that this is an individual that doesn't deserve to walk in these halls of Congress, and that is a serial fraudster. So we'll see where the week takes us. I can't speak to the authors and their intentions, whether they plan to bring these up or not. That's a question for them.
Chairman Aguilar, House Democrats asked the administration to intervene in Governor Greg Abbott's floating border wall and some of the more aggressive tactics he's taken on the southern border. What other pressure points do you have in terms of trying to get him to back off and maybe, slow down or rescind Operation Lone Star? And between now and next year, what can Congress realistically do on immigration to kind of address some of these overwhelming issues?
With respect to what the governor is doing, I think those practices are inhumane. I think some of the reports we have seen for Texas law enforcement officers, again, these are unverified, but just some that have been reported, are atrocious and terrible. There is concern that the administration has raised related to the safety of some of those tactics that they've been employing. The state of Texas is resistant, but this could end up being litigated. I'm not going to get ahead of that. What I can say is that we know that we have a broken immigration system. House Democrats have stood to solve this issue time and time again. We stand ready and willing to do that, whether we are in the minority or in the majority. We feel that there are solutions in place that we can implement, namely bipartisan bills. Like the Dream and Promise Act, that would have put a path to citizenship for so many individuals, as well as the Farm Worker Modernization Act. Again, bipartisan bills that the House passed when Democrats were in control. Vice Ranking Member Grace Meng and her work in the Appropriations Committee, significant investments that the Department of Homeland Security has made. Chairman Neguse talked about the record levels and the migration that we are seeing now at the lowest levels in 2 years. Republicans are intent on manufacturing a crisis because it helps them politically. But we'll let the administration speak to their tactics and what the conversation with Texas will be.
On appropriations, we heard from Republicans yesterday saying they want spending levels to return to 2019 non-defense discretionary spending levels. What's the issue with that number, as you oftentimes refer to it as draconian?
2019 numbers? Well, the problem with it is they passed an agreement that is now law that requires specific funding levels. House Republicans, I'll let Representative Meng talk here next. House Republicans chose not from the very beginning. From day one, they decided to set that agreement aside. We're seeing in the agriculture appropriations bill, I think those are 2007 levels of spending that they have advocated for. They reduced it $200 million after they went to subcommittee. And now the amendments that they want to take to get the votes of the most extreme members of their conference are setting it back even more. So the question is an issue fundamentally of trust. We have a law that was passed. Your speaker, the Republican speaker, negotiated this law, and now the Republican extremists choose not to abide by that law. And so what are we to do? We look across the across the Capitol, and Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats are marking up to the law, and House Republicans choose to be irrelevant with the numbers that they're putting forward because they're not going to see the light of day, and they're going to be harmful to so many vital programs that help our communities. But I'll let Representative Meng speak.
House Republican leadership has really kowtowed to the most extremes of their caucus. The lack of trust is really an issue. Not only have they gone back on promises made when they negotiated the bill, but we have seen through the appropriations process, even as they have agreed on and voted in subcommittee on community projects, for example, they have decided to bow to the extremes and eliminate some of those projects. And so we have seen over and over again how there is a lack of trust. And, you know, when we're going home talking to our constituents, both Republicans, Democrats, and everyone in between, they want to know how Congress is coming together, pushing legislation and pushing funding and resources to help people in their districts. They do not want to see Congress, led by the House Republicans, playing these extreme political games.
Last question. Yeah, so probably directed more at the gentleman on the Judiciary Committee, but tomorrow Judiciary Committee is expected to take up proceedings to hold Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg in contempt of Congress. I wonder, what do you make of these the Republicans trying to do this and maybe their efforts to tackle big tech in general?
I'll start with Chair Neguse and then Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
I don't know that I would necessarily opine on the particular threat of contempt that they have made, because my understanding is that that may not ultimately we may not ultimately proceed tomorrow with respect to that step. I think that more broadly speaking, the way in which the chairman of the Judiciary Committee has approached oversight has been reckless, and, you know, making sort of these continual threats of contempt citations against anyone and everyone, whether it's an individual in the private sector or in the case of the FBI director, which, as you probably read, a threatened contempt citation that he made, only to withdraw it, I believe, yesterday. I think that we would be far better served if we focused on, as I said previously, the real issues that most Americans care about. I don't think that they are interested in the wild goose chases that the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, in addition to the other various committees of jurisdiction, had been pursuing on a litany of various investigations. I just don't think the American people have the patience for it, and they would probably prefer us to take up matters that actually matter to them. With respect to tech issues more broadly, as you know, the Congress last session under Democratic control conducted bipartisan work to try to address any particular antitrust concerns that folks had at the time, and I suspect that bipartisan consensus will continue to grow in the Congress. But beyond that, I would defer any other comments to Vice Chair Lieu, who served on the Judiciary Committee much longer than I have. So,
thank you. We expect all witnesses to follow the rule of law. Unfortunately, the chair of the House Judiciary Committee ignored a bipartisan congressional subpoena. The actions of the House Judiciary Committee chair have undermined the credibility of all congressional committees in seeking information, truthful information from witnesses, and undermine the rule of law.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lynch, this is not just a bad bill. It's a cruel bill. It's a deceptive bill. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I serve on both the Financial Services Committee and I'm ranking member of the Agriculture Committee. We are wrestling with the same situation. Now, people have said, well, we're going to get $120 million to run this bill. But that is not true. What they're saying is they want to steal $120 million from the Treasury Department. You think the Treasury Department is going to stand by and take that? So listen, let's be fearful here. Let me point out some things. While I appreciate the Republicans' efforts both in the Financial Services and Agriculture Committees to try to close existing gaps in the regulation of digital assets, this bill would create an entire new set of loopholes that make a mockery of our existing security laws. The CFTC has the appropriate authority to regulate the derivatives market. I championed that subcommittee for 12 years before I became ranking member in the Agriculture Committee. And the SEC has the aggregate authority to regulate the securities market. There is no verifiable need to alter or amend these authorities. Why do we want to do that? Including with respect to digital assets. This bill before us would exempt most cryptocurrency from well-established security laws and regulations under the purview of the SEC. And this would pose serious concerns for our investors, our customers,